Mountains bow down and the seas roar at the sound of your name. I sing for joy at the work of your hands. Forever I'll love you, forever I'll stand. Nothing compares to the promise I have in you. Shout to the Lord, all the earth, let us sing. Power and majesty, praise to the King. Mountains bow down and the seas roar at the sound of your name. I sing for joy at the work of your hands. Forever I'll love you, forever I'll stand. Nothing compares to the promise I have in you.
All right. Turn to Matthew chapter 10. We are now at the heart of the reason that we went to this chapter. We were looking at really how to conquer fear. And God's perfect love casts out fear. And so we began this, well, anyhow, that's why we went to this chapter. And so, we went down our commands list and looked at the verse that talks about boldness versus fearfulness. And that's verse 28 here. And that's the section that we're going to be looking at today. And so boldness, it's I like that working definition. It's confidence that what I have to say and do is true and just and right in God's sight. And then as we've just kind of looked at this section as a whole, wisdom. God wants us to see things from His perspective. He wants us to accomplish His goals in His time. He wants us, His children, to experience boldness, to experience determination, to experience endurance, to experience all these things, all these commands, this character of His. He wants us to experience His very nature, His very character. And that's why He's given us His word, and that's why He's given us commands and promises and all of these things. And so let's, I think what I'll do is I'll just pick it up in verse 16, and I'll probably read to the end of verse 39, and then we'll pick up where we left off in verse 26 and cover this next section. So, Matthew 10, I'll start at verse 16. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues, and ye shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. But when they deliver you up, take no thought how or what ye shall speak, for it shall be given you in that same hour what ye shall speak. For it is not ye that speak, but the Spirit of your Father which speaketh in you. And the brother shall deliver the brother to death, and the father the child, and the children shall rise up against parents, and cause them to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all for my name's sake. But he that endureth to the end shall be saved. But when they persecute you in this city, flee ye into another. For verily I say unto you, ye shall not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man be come. The disciple is not above his master, nor the servant above his Lord. It is enough for the disciple that he be as his master, and the servant as his Lord. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more shall they call them of his own household? Fear them not, therefore, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known. What I tell you in darkness, that speak ye in light. And what ye hear in the ear, preach ye upon the housetops. And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing? And one of them shall not fall to the ground without your Father. But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear ye not, therefore. Ye are of more value than many sparrows. Whosoever therefore shall confess me before men, him will I confess also before my Father which is in heaven. But whosoever shall deny me before men, him will I also deny before my Father which is in heaven. Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's foes shall be they of his own household. He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. He that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he that taketh not his cross, and followeth after me, is not worthy of me. He that findeth his life shall lose it, and he that loseth his life for my sake shall find it. Well, hopefully you've been writing down as we've been going through this. We want to finish with steps of action from this passage that would help somebody overcome fear, ourselves or somebody else that we're trying to help to that end. And so it's amazing how through this chapter alone, it repeats the same thoughts, maybe in a little bit more detail, maybe with a little bit different focus, but basically the same. I mean, when we look at, we didn't read verses 1 to 15, but basically it's go, show, and tell. Everybody remember show and tell? You probably didn't have show and tell, but anyhow, I remember that, from school, and that's literally what he's telling his disciples to do. Go, show, and tell about the kingdom, the kingdom of heaven. And then he tells them, look, as you do this, you are my workmen, and if you do this, you are worthy of your hire. Some will receive you, some will reject you. But I love that part, when God says his word will never return void, okay? And yet in this section it says that some will reject your words. Some will reject your teaching. It's literally like, how when he fed the 5,000, and it's like it just kept coming. It just kept multiplying. So when we go and we share, and it's rejected, it's going to be multiplied. It's going to accomplish what God set it out to do back to you, if not to them. It's literally like God is multiplying. You're sharing with them the truth. You're speaking peace to them, the gospel of the kingdom of heaven. You're sharing with them hope, and you're sharing with them victory. And God says, let it return to you, because it's not going to return void. It's going to be multiplied, and if they reject it, then it's going to be multiplied to you. I'm not saying it couldn't go to anybody else as well, but I just thought it was interesting how, if they reject your peace, then let it come back to you. Let it return to you. Let it multiply your confidence, your boldness in the truth. And then in the next section, verses 16 to 25, behold, I am your good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. I am sending you forth. Go as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be wise. Beware. Be filled with the Spirit and be as your Master and Lord and endure unto the end. Experience his salvation unto the end. And we talked about, obviously, the various applications of that. But let's just now, with that in mind, let's just pick it up here in verse 26. Anyhow, let's look at each detail. It says, fear them not, therefore. Who are them? Obviously, we know he's talking to his disciples, the ones that he has sent out. But who is the them?
Probably the Pharisees.
Okay, Pharisees is part of the them.
The men that hate them.
Okay.
Despitefully use them.
Everybody that hates them and despitefully uses them. And according to this passage, that would also include, as you said, the religious leaders. It would also include governors and kings, governmental authorities, and include all those that hate you, including who?
Gentiles.
Including the Gentiles and the Jews and
It's his family.
your own family. Your own family. So that's the them. That's a lot of them. That's a lot of them possibilities. But it says, fear them not. So they each have. Om and I were talking this week. Really, fear is related to loss. When it comes to your family, do you want to lose that relationship? You don't want to lose that relationship. When it comes to government, when it comes to the religious leaders, when it comes to the Gentiles, when it comes to the Jews, there's loss of different things that they can bring upon you, that they can do towards you. And he's saying, in all of those, fear them not, therefore. We began this study looking at a lot of different things that we can fear. Loss of reputation. You guys mentioned a slew of things. And here he's speaking specifically, don't fear what each of these that hate you can do to you. Whatever that may be. And so as he works on through, he says, he gives us the reason that we shouldn't fear. He says, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known. So this is why we should not fear them. There is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, and hid that shall not be known. What comes to your mind in any of those relationships that he's saying here is the reason to not fear?
The truth will come out.
Okay, the truth, for one thing.
Their sins are open before me.
Okay, their sins. He knows their sins, and what? And they will be made known at some future time. They will be made known. What else?
I'm shallow and temporal, I guess. My mind immediately went to political and governmental things. All the fake news and lies and everything else, there will be a time where it will all be made known.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not just, well, I'm jumping ahead of myself, but yeah, absolutely. Foolishness, impurity, corruption, deceit, lies, hypocrisy. What is the essence of hypocrisy? It's the opposite of sincerity, but hypocrisy is talking about making something look like one thing. It's holding that mask up like they used to do in the theaters, when they would do a theatrical performance, they would hold the mask up. That was the character that they were pretending to be. You knew they really weren't that character, but that was the character that they were pretending to exhibit. And so the lies, the hypocrisy, all of that is going to be made known in each case. It's not, they may be making it look good, on the outside, but God makes known what the motives, the intents, in each and every case. Anybody else?
Would empathy fall in that category?
I don't know, roll on with your thought there.
When you're feeling sorry or having artificial guilt, would that be falling into that category? Is that you feel something totally removed, that just like feeling sorry for somebody, but you're really not?
Are you saying in regards to those that are hating you and are expressing that hatred?
Yeah.
Anybody else? Anybody want to jump in on that?
Probably falls into like hypocrisy, right? Pretending you're feeling a certain way, but in reality you're not. I would think that would fall into, hypocrisy.
Anybody else?
I guess I'm wondering, like, are you talking about how there is this big push to be empathetic towards all these causes? Is that what you're saying?
Mm.
And that like everybody wants, you have to awaken that
Yeah.
inner empathy or
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah,
that
be
there's-
woke, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
You're really not?
Oh, really not? No, yeah.
there's no such thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, we want your business. We ain't woke. We just want your money.
Yeah. Sympathy obviously is based upon facts. You know what I mean? The created empathy for each cause or whatever out there, yes, we are to love them, but we aren't to go along with whatever they're promoting that isn't true or right or just, So, that's
And that's covered.
That's-
It's covered, I think is kind of what he's saying.
Exactly.
Something is covered.
exactly, and it's made to look like if you are loving, you will be toward, and
You will look this way, and you will say this, and you will do this.
exactly,
If you're, right,
yeah,
That was pretty
Empathetic.
insightful, Carol.
yeah.
yeah. So,
Follow community guidelines.
and that really is, God wants us to know His love, and He wants us to experience His boldness, and that is confidence in what is true and right and just, not accepting of what is not. We've said it all along. Today it's like you have to love what I do in order to prove that you love me. On every front, on everybody. That's how you prove that you love me. But that is not loving them. That's not, if I'm doing wrong or I'm headed down a road that is going to lead to my destruction, and you pat me on the back and say, oh, I love you, and you don't give me the warning, you don't give me the truth, you don't give me what I need, then you're not being bold, you're not being loving, you're being manipulative on the one hand and you're being passive on the other, you know what I mean? So it's and that's the way things are presented today, is that, to prove your love, you have to agree with my actions. And that is the farthest thing from the truth. Oh.
Yeah, Bree had sent me a little,
Yeah,
yeah, and she was saying, well, you can read it, sweetie.
I was just going to try to find it. Go ahead.
Well, you were talking about if we as Christians start accepting new definitions, Daryl, like you were saying, new definitions of what love is, what real love is. If we're accepting what the world now is saying what love looks like, that's wrong.
Well, just like the world said what God is.
Right,
There's God, everybody has their own God, and that's okay.
right.
That breakpoint
Right.
message that you sent me about the defining of words
Yes.
by John
Stone Street.
Stone Street. Excellent. There was what was that work? Wilberforce.
Yes.
Wilberforce. I guess Breakpoint has this Wilberforce weekend, and they did it online. And John
Stone Street.
Stone Street did a thing on defining words, and that's what's happening.
It was
Words are
something
being
about
real-
truth and love, right?
Yes, truth and love, and you
Right,
can go to
right.
yeah.
Society is rewriting, like you said, Daryl, it's rewriting what empathy is and what it looks like. And if you're not doing it this way, then you aren't loving, and that's not true. I mean, okay.
Yeah.
And how to enter into a dialogue regarding that is when we need to be more prone to, well, you just don't understand what, okay, empathy is. Let's just go with that word. Okay, define empathy to me. I want to know where it is that you're coming from that you think I'm not understanding it. Because more than likely, it's a skewed interpretation of it. So I'm going to be able to, with God's help, give you a correct definition of what that is and where I'm coming from, and you're just a hot mess, so, yeah.
And most of the time, if you're actually having a fairly calm, peaceful conversation, they will, with their own definition, you can prove to them that they're wrong
Yes.
with their own words, with their own definition. You don't even have to. I mean, yes, you can obviously still share the truth, but usually you can prove them wrong with their own words if you're having a conversation about the definition of what they say it is. I mean, we see that all the time. We see that all the time. They say this is what, you know, is, well, I guess really what it's all related to is that in the world there's no absolutes. There's just no absolutes. And so God is absolutely, and he is absolutely true, you know. And there is absolute truth for us to live by, and yet, you know, people, there's no absolutes.
And words do have a meaning.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. There was a guy that someone like Ben Shapiro or whatever was dialoguing with this man about why socialism is so wonderful. And in like 2 minutes, with what this guy was saying, he came back to saying, okay, so what you're saying is you want free enterprise. You know, that's where it was totally going. The things that he was saying, well, if we just let, you know, people do their own business, you know, whatever it was, he was just digging himself deeper and deeper and just ending up coming back to, you don't want socialism, you want free enterprise, which is what we have, you know.
Yep.
So you,
Yeah.
yeah, well, you know, yeah, within a, yeah.
You know, and that's why we need to stay close to the Spirit, because the Spirit is the discerner of the intents of the heart, and you can tell when a person is truly showing empathy versus someone that is trying to justify their wrongdoing and wants your approval of it.
Right.
You know, that's so different than someone who can see you, understand your plight, but then offer you the truth, though, not what you want to hear, and not condone what you're doing if it's wrong, you know, but still, you know, understand that there is a struggle, you know. But, yeah, Bree, did you find it? Or-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically what you had said.
Yeah.
The world doesn't know agape love because you can't have agape love apart from God. The world knows a shallow type of love, their interpretation of love, but not God's absolute form of love, which is Him. The world takes pleasure in telling believers what is loving and unloving and playing on emotions and using guilt tactics to try to convince us that their shallow love is the truest love. So when the church starts telling you what is loving and unloving and it matches up with what the world is saying, and then even the church is using the same tactics, playing on emotions and guilting, take heed to wrong influence. Satan loves to disguise himself as an angel of light. And then just know the true light, hold tight to agape love, to Him. Do not be deceived or controlled by those who are influenced by, you know, Satan. He obviously is pushing for the disunity among believers too. So he's at work within
Absolutely.
believers to be guilting each other because he's already accomplishing that with the world.
Right.
And so you've got it within the midst and then on the outside, you know, and he's taking great pleasure in that.
Right.
No, I just sent it to Mom, but I can send it to you.
Yeah, that's exactly, what is happening here. And that's what he's encouraging us. He's saying there's nothing covered that shall not be revealed. There's nothing hid that shall not be known. So he wants us to know that, yes, Satan masquerades as an angel of light, and wolves put on sheep clothing, and that I love the what was the thing I think yesterday, that it's easy to fool somebody, and then it's hard to convince them that it's much harder to convince them. I'm not saying it the right
Yeah,
way.
it's
Yes.
harder to convince somebody that they've been fooled than to fool somebody.
Yeah. And so, God wants us to know that wherever this foolishness is coming from, wherever this wrong, evil thinking is coming from, no matter who the them is, what source it is, that his truth prevails and his spirit will prevail. And, a lot of times it's just a matter of asking. I think we don't think that Jesus asked the Father. When we see Jesus having a conversation with somebody and he knows the intents of their heart and he knows the attitude that they're having right then, God will give us that same insight. He'll give us the words to speak, no matter what situation we're in, and he'll give us the insight to help show them, reveal to them the thoughts and intents of their heart.
Yeah,
That's what he did.
Helping those who oppose themselves.
Yeah.
In
And
Isaiah.
so that is what you're ultimately wanting. You're not wanting to just show the person their foolishness. You're wanting to lead them to the wisdom of God, and to absolute truth. And so that's your goal. And if that's your goal, they're going to sense that you love them. They're going to know that you love them.
That's where it's gonna break. That's where it's gonna deliver brother over brother and father over child.
Exactly. Yes.
They'll either listen to what you're saying, or they'll turn their back, and your
Right.
relationship is broken there.
Absolutely.
And
And-
then you know.
And can you just, we have to have the peace to let then God
Right.
do what he's got to do there. And that's hard because we want to just go after him and go after him and go after him. It's family, whether it's church family or whether it's our immediate family or whoever it is, somebody that you love, you just want to go and go and go. And that's love has that limit in the sense of the relationship that you've got to now leave that to God and then
Which takes you back to not fear that break, but that you have your Father to get you through this.
exactly.
And that's a hard thing to do,
it is.
because you can't see that.
Because it's loss. Because
Yes.
that's what you're fearing. You're fearing the loss of the relationship,
Yes.
and like you said, fear is usually connected with loss.
Yes.
Loss of something.
Yeah.
And God, how many times in His Scripture tells us He is our all in all. So therefore, there is nothing that we should fear.
And then you feel like you're standing there all by yourself.
Yeah.
But
And
you're
then
really not.
yeah. And you're feeling even worse because half the time they end up blaming you.
Exactly.
You are the reason that this is happening. You are the reason, and then that's hard to take, and because are any of us absolutely 100% perfect? No, we know we're not 100% perfect, but you knew you did the best that the Lord could do, and then you just, you got to leave it with the Lord, and then you got to, keep coming back to Him. That's what He says. What I tell you in darkness, that speak ye in light. What ye hear in the ear, preach ye on the housetops. I mean, it's literally, it's literally like he, again, is encouraging us, if you back up those few verses, to endure to my end, experience my salvation in the midst of this type of situation. You've got to seek me, because it's going to seem like obviously darkness, but you have spoken light. And what you've heard God tell you in the ear, you've preached, you've shared, and you've shared boldly and confidently, and then you got to leave the results and patiently wait on Him. And that is challenging. That is challenging to do. So, but that's, well, I put this question down. Knowing His will and knowing His grace, can we trust Him through His Spirit to show and tell us all that we need to live boldly and righteously and godly in this present dark world? We can. And a lot of it, what does He say? You receive not because you ask not. Now, sometimes He's gracious and doesn't give us because we're asking amiss, but if we keep asking amiss, then He's eventually gonna show us what we need to know through that. But if we keep asking rightly, for the right reasons, for the right purpose, then He is going to answer that prayer always. So, they may not see, Daryl, the true empathy coming through you the way they want to see it, but God will enable them to do so eventually, hopefully. Anyhow, Bree.
I was just thinking of another version, another just application, not version, of how, things that are covered will be revealed too, was how we were talking, like, I think you can, at least I can, like, have a fear that I'm missing something on all the information that's given right now, like, just applicable to now. And, so many of friends and stuff have different opinions on it, and then some say there is no right or wrong, right? But, God is a God of right or wrong, and, anyway, but I was like, there is a fear, too, that, like, you're gonna miss something. But when God says, ask, seek, and knock, like, I'm gonna show you what is the right and what is the wrong, even in COVID. Like, I will. So if your fear keeps you from asking me and trusting that I will tell you, and then you can walk confidently in that, like, that's hidden things that will be revealed too. Like His, that's, I know, talking more negative, but I'm just saying, even His mysteries will be revealed to you when you don't walk in fear, even before Him. Fear of Him not giving you wisdom. Does that make sense? I feel like it came out really fragmented. It was really fluid in my mind. But anyway, I just thought that was, how we were talking about when you ask God for wisdom over anything, but especially during this, it's like a whirlwind of information and people's opinions. The other day, I was like, God, like, just give me wisdom no matter what, even if it's something different than what I thought. Like, I just want your wisdom. And He's faithful for that, to provide that. So that was kind of bunny trail. Anyway.
He is the truth, and He is our Father, and He wants us to know the truth so that we can act upon it, and so that we can share the truth in love. That's what He wants.
It's helped me to think too, like when I'm thinking of Him, that He's my Father, for me to think the opposite. I'm not an orphan. He's not, I'm not out there by myself. He's with me.
Right.
Because He is my Father.
Yeah. And that's what I love about this next verse, 28. It says, and fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear them which are able to destroy both soul and body in hell. And then, like Max was saying, are not 2 sparrows sold for a farthing, and one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father, without His knowledge, without His care and concern and so on and so forth. So it's like all this ties together. Fear not them which kill the body, right? So they can,
It's a win-win for you.
it's a win-win for you, but they're limited in their scope,
Right,
right? They can kill your body.
right. The worst
But-
that thing that's gonna happen is I'm gonna die, but I will be in eternity with my Father.
Exactly. And when we've all heard the stories of Corrie ten Boom or whoever, you know, what can they not take away? They cannot take away your soul and your spirit. They can't take away your choice to choose joy. They can't take away the Holy Spirit within you. They can't take away all that He is, His peace. And that is more powerful than whatever they can do to the body. The things that people have suffered, martyrs and prisoners of war and everything, you know, it boggles your mind that you could come out of something like that and actually still be a sane person, even though your body may be crippled for the rest of your life.
The widows
You know.
of the widows of Elizabeth Elliot. I mean of Jim Elliot and that crew. I mean, that led to the salvation of a whole tribe of the Waodani.
Yeah.
So
Fear Him, which, what's he say? He says, fear Him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Where does your mind go when you hear that?
That's after judgment, you're in hell.
I think of false prophets. Like somebody that's trying to lead me astray from the truth.
Anybody else? I think, were you referring to, you know, believer and unbeliever, the
When you're in
great
hell,
white throne judgment?
Judgment's been done, and, you know, the destruction is still gonna be going on for a long time. It's not, maybe destruction is too strong a word, because it's not really totally destroyed, it's wrecked.
Yeah, yeah,
And just the constant torture of knowing that you're wrong. And I immediately thought about, well, just give me a taste of water,
right,
and just a droplet, and just
yeah. And I think that message is meant to be obviously given to those that you're sharing the gospel with, but He's speaking to His disciples. So what is the thrust to them?
He's in control. No
Okay.
matter what happens, he's always in control.
Yep.
He won't let it, we don't have the ability to kill anybody. He allows that to happen.
At like first it seems like it's Satan, but then isn't it talking about God?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is so funny because people don't like viewing Him
No,
as that,
No.
and that gives you a false view of who God is,
Exactly.
and it gives you the love people feel
Right.
of who God is because they deny this.
Which is exactly the basis of not seeing the fullness of His love. You know, that's the basis of that is, you know, He's going to judge, and what is He going to judge? He's going to judge actions, right? The action of rejecting Him for the unbeliever, but is he not going to judge our actions, His disciples, as well? Absolutely. You know.
And then it goes into, like Maxine was saying, how He knows everything. Everything's going to be made known, and He knows when a sparrow falls out of the sky.
right, and he allows it.
Yeah, it's all allowed
Not one
by
of
His
them
hand.
will fall to the ground apart from your Father.
Mhm.
So they're not, so there's no way that that's gonna happen if he doesn't allow it to happen.
Mhm.
Right. And that emphasis that He is your Father. Are you going to respond perfectly to all these stressful situations and all these stressful relationships? No, you're not. But He is your Father. And so you are going to be with him forever, and yet it's also important what we do and say, because he is going to judge those actions. And yet he wants us to know how he values us, his evaluation of us, how deeply he values us. And so, it's just amazing when you go back to that Psalm 19, the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. And the commands of the Lord are pure, enlightening the eyes. And the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether, which is why we need to fear the Lord, because what? The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. It gives us that insight to what is hidden. It gives us that cleansing that we need when we haven't, when we've reacted instead of responding, in some of these situations. And so, he wants us to know all of that, and he wants us to reverence the fact of just how greatly he values us. The angels stand in awe of how he values us. Thoughts?
Terry Pluto had a very good article this morning in the Plain Dealer, and he talked about somebody that comes up to you and asks you to do something, well, out of fear of not wanting them to like you, you say yes, when in your heart you really think, I don't want to do this. And the whole gist of it was, God says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. If you don't want to do it, just say, I don't want to do it. Don't give them an excuse. You don't need to. Just tell them the truth. Rather than beating around the bush and going, well, I don't know. Well, I'll pray about it. Well, I'll think about it. No, if in your heart you really don't want to do it, just say, I don't want to do that. They will respect you more for that than saying, well, maybe I'll be there, maybe I can make it at 7, and then you don't show up till 8, or you disappoint them by not doing it or not coming at all. Just be honest with them and bring, and it was very good. The last line was, let your yes be yes and let your no be no. And that's what he wants us to do, and I think he's trying to tell them that here.
And that's where I think the boldness comes in, is the confidence that
Right.
what you're saying is true and right and just
And best.
and best. And because most likely they're not going to accept it that way.
Right.
They're not going to accept your no
And you're afraid
as
they're
what's
not gonna
best.
like you is why you do that. But that's not a good enough reason. God doesn't want that.
That's
Right.
fear of man. That's giving way to a
Exactly.
lie as
Right.
opposed to the truth, which is giving way. Granted, you do find a civil, kind
Right.
way to say
Right.
things as much as lies within anyone in this situation, but we're under no obligation. I think that's a lot of what is happening in our church these days. The church these days is just not wanting to say anything, and for those who do
For
speak,
fear.
yes,
Somebody's not going to like
the
Mhm.
loss,
Mhm.
the loss of whatever, as opposed to it being clean and pure, and there's such purity and cleanliness in truth, and just not being afraid to say things, caring enough to confront with truth. Just, it's all been skewed as to that's not good.
Right.
Christians always say yes, and
Mhm.
everything is always fine, just fine.
And not only will individuals take advantage of the fact that they know you don't want to say no, but a lot of these groups that are going around right now and are going to cities and going to schools and getting what they want because they know that they're afraid to say no, and then the loss that comes to everybody because they are advancing their cause because nobody will say no, because you don't want to appear not empathetic or sympathetic toward their cause.
It's
And
mostly to the wrong.
although most of the causes, or a lot of the causes, are impure and unjust and so on and so forth, and yet if nobody stands for truth, if nobody says no, then they're just going to run everybody over.
And here
You
we
know.
are.
Yeah, so, yep,
Started a long time ago.
yep,
And
yep.
just the blatant aggression with which things are being met too. It's not just people going in and saying things. It's people downright bullying and terrorizing people.
Mhm.
And the few and far between are those who are, for lack of a better word, getting up in their face or standing, in the power of the Lord in front of people and just saying no. What was it, that guy in that parade for the 4th of July parade? Antifa was coming down the street, a little community parade was coming up the street. They said, we're not going to let you go. And he said,
Get out of my way.
and he said, no, we're not going to. And the guy just popped him in the,
And everybody left.
no,
The
you're not
parade
going to do it.
proceeded.
Right? Just some old guy just said, no, you're not going to do this. Bullies. I mean, it's a whole nother level of bullying. It's
Right.
adult
They
bullying.
call it emotional bullying is how he referred to it in this article.
Oh, the
The Terry Pluto article.
Pluto
Yeah, it was
emotional
in this
bullying.
morning's Point.
That's
It
what
was
it
very
is,
good.
yes.
Mm.
It's
And
emotional bullying.
And in the church, we're encountering spiritual bullying. Love Jesus, do this.
Daryl,
Talking the difference between destruction and annihilation. Annihilation you can't rebuild. Destruction you can rebuild.
right.
Structure.
And it's really when it's talking about the fact that he's able to destroy both soul and body in hell. This is the word Gehenna. This is an earthly burning. This
That's
is
annihilation.
we use it as hell, but he's talking about what not only, yes, it would include the future judgment, of whether or not you go to heaven or hell, but he's talking about the destruction that you're going to experience in your own soul if you don't fear him, which is what everybody was just talking about,
Earthly what?
What?
Gehenna. Earthly.
That was a place.
Oh, I know, but you said Gehenna is an earthly destruction, and you had a second word after that.
Fire. I thought it was fire. No.
Burning.
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 There you go.
Earthly burning.
I don't remember what I said.
I'll go back and listen.
But anyhow, so, he's wanting us to recognize that, it's important what we do and say here because we don't want to promote fear. And like Max was saying, you're promoting fear if you're afraid to say that you don't want to do something or that it's not best for you or it's not right or whatever the case may be. We may think that they're wanting us to focus on the fact that we're not being sympathetic or empathetic or whatever. But no, in reality, you're boldly, Did Jesus know where he was to go and who he was to be with? And he boldly stopped being with these people or whatever and moved on to wherever he needed to go. Were there still people there that needed him and needed healing and needed, yeah, but it was his time to move on to wherever.
But they saw him out. I mean, the crowds got bigger and bigger and bigger no matter where he went.
Yeah. And it's that confidence that, okay, Lazarus is in need,
Right.
but I'm not to go now, and so, am I using the right? Yeah.
Yes.
And so you got to be confident. They were all like, are you crazy?
Right.
You're not going? You don't care about him. You don't, may have been some of the thoughts
Right.
that it was going through their head, and obviously even the family when he eventually got there, but he knew and was confident and bold in his Father's will, and it's so important that we
And I
be
think
the
another
same.
thing they thought was, why are you going there? The last time we were there, they tried to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And he had the confidence and the boldness to still go, and that too. So the confidence to wait and be fine, and he had the confidence to go and it would be fine.
Mm. Yeah, great. So
Right.
true.
Just real
Yeah, I
quick
know.
here. This verse, fear not them which kill the body, but are able to, and aren't able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. And what the Lord is speaking to me is that God owns everybody. He created everybody, and they exist only because he allows them to exist. He gives them breath. And so we belong to Him. Everyone belongs to Him. Well, we belong to Him in spirit. But God is Lord over all. And that's whom we should fear. You know, I think we put people on different levels of, you know, playing fields. You know what I mean? Like, wow, you know, that's real strong, and so God's got to use extra power over here again. You know, no. Okay, we're all God's creation here. He is Lord over all, and I am the Lord's who has that power over all. So that's who I am to fear, and can get excited that I am on the Lord's side. Lord, we are thine. And then go forth in that. You know, it's, you know, Satan, it's like this huge force, and then God's got to rally against this, and I'm somewhere in between all of that. No, that's not how it is. We're all humans, you know. God is Lord over all, and God has all the power, and I'm with Him. So, you know, that just, and like you said too, you know, they can play with your mind, and they can destroy your body, but the Lord says, you need to stay safe with me, stay close to me. That way you're eternally safe. That's already sealed. But while you're here on earth and you're waging war for me, you got to stay close to me, because if you're not, then you're going to suffer loss in your body, and we know that. In our mind, will, and emotions, we can be tortured for not being close to the Lord and rejecting truth that God has revealed to us.
Right.
So He's saying, be very careful of that. You know, stay close to me, and that's why, though I'm sending you out as sheep amongst wolves, you don't need to fear. He's telling you, that's the situation.
Right.
But don't fear.
Right.
Don't fear. And why not? Because He's with us.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's reminding ourselves too that in the midst of that, you know, we're not wrestling against flesh and blood. We're not wrestling against these people, whoever they are. We're not really wrestling against them. We're wrestling against the principalities and the powers that they're giving into, or that are controlling them. And so
God died for all of them.
Exactly.
He gave His precious blood for them.
Right.
And they're siding with the enemy. And so we want to be a voice of truth and freedom for
Right.
people, you know.
I felt like that was, I don't know if it was, but I felt like Pastor Leach, that was his favorite verse. It's like he would say that, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. He would say that over and over and over, or it jumped out to me anyhow, over and over and over, you know, because he wants us to know where the real battle is, and that we need Him. And He is Lord over all their reasoning. He is Lord over all their evil intents. He is Lord over all their abuse, you know, to make you feel bad. But that is, you know, I don't know, this was just, I mean, just so good, because He wants us to be confident that what we have to do and say, you know, is just and true and right in His sight. And He wants us to experience that confidence all the time. You know, like everyone has mentioned here, He wants us to do that all the time. And, you know, I think all of us struggle with not wanting to say no when we want to say no, you know, and you know, of course, yes doesn't seem like we struggle as much with that, but we need just as much insight as to when to say yes as we do when to say no, you know, and because because God has, made His will known, and we just need to, ask how He wants us to work it out, today and with every day that He blesses us with. And that brings us to the closing song.
Well, we'll probably
Just
end
pass
there.
on that? Okay.
Yeah, time-wise.
All right. Dan, would you close us in a word of prayer?
Lord, thank you so much for this wonderful time of learning about you and the words that you've given to us and how we can then apply them in order to live a life satisfying to you and that glorifies you. And thank you so much for the generosity of the Northerns for allowing this to host it, and for just the encouragement of everyone that comes on a regular basis, and the great joy and communion that we get to experience with everyone here. And pray that we would take what we talked about today and be able to boldly live in the light of the truth that you've given to us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.